Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MEGIN Spotlights, where we highlight the people and organizations making a difference in neuroscience and brain health. I'm your host, Gabriele Richardson, today, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Monika Jones, CEO and co-founder of the Pediatric Epilepsy Surgery Alliance, or PESA for short. Monika, welcome to the show. It's great to see you. We've known each other for a long time, so I'm very happy to have you on board. So let's start from the beginning. So for our audience who isn't familiar with the Pediatric Epilepsy Surgery Alliance, can you tell us a bit about your own experiences as a mum of a son with epilepsy?
Yes, my first son was born with a massive unilateral brain malformation called hemimegalencephaly, and it caused him to have quite literally hundreds of seizures per day, including infantile spasms. So by the time he was a few days old, we were told he would probably need a procedure known as a hemispherectomy, which is removing or disconnecting the entire half of the brain, technically the cerebral cortex. I couldn't believe it when I was told that. I'd never heard about epilepsy surgery. I'd never heard about hemispherectomy. I didn't even know what drug-resistant seizures were until my son was born. A few years after that, my husband and I decided that, we didn't have a care pathway afterwards. We didn't have a map, so to speak, a roadmap to navigate care. So we started what was then known as the Brain Recovery Project to initiate and fund research on outcomes after hemispherectomy. And then I would say about 2017, we started to notice that really it was the entire community of children with drug-resistant epilepsy who need or should have or should be at least discussing epilepsy surgery weren't really represented by any specific patient organization, advocacy group. So we decided to put kind of a stake in the sand, a flag in the sand, and say, this is what we're going to do. Our board agreed, and therefore now we're the Pediatric Epilepsy Surgery Alliance. So we help families understand the road to epilepsy surgery and what they need to do after surgery.
That's an incredible, powerful journey you've gone through. But can you tell us a little bit how PESA has grown over the last 10 years? Because I've seen it in the last 5 years grown so much already, which has been impressive. So give us a little bit of an insight on how you've managed to grow it this big.
Well, I think once we really started being the voice of this community, the parents really were on board, sharing stories about how their children have experienced delays to epilepsy surgery referral, long waits for epilepsy surgery, and then parents really want to understand what happens after surgery. One thing we do really well is our family conferences, where we gather researchers, clinicians, families to discuss all the things that touch our community, whether it's what type of surgical evaluation you should get to how you plan for that transition to adult care. The families want impact, and I think that's what has really helped us grow. I think the clinical community also sees that we are very laser focused on this group. This is what we do. We represent these families, and I think they really appreciate that as well. Certainly the researchers do. We have the honor of working with groups from Carnegie Mellon, Caltech, Harvard, UCLA, all over the world, and they're tremendously interested in our community. These are pretty remarkable children that have had part of the brain removed, or half of it, or a quarter, or a piece ablated, and researchers are just clamoring to work with us. It's really exciting.
So you and your team are very vocal, which is great. And I think that's, one of the exciting sort of pieces that I've seen with your team, how you've grown this, about the idea that epilepsy surgery should not just be seen as a last resort. So how do you manage to engage with clinicians and parents to help change that narrative? Because you've done that extremely well, I think.
We have, but there is still so much work to be done in that space. These are standards of care nationally and internationally, that after failure of 2 appropriate and tolerated anti-seizure medications, all children, all persons with medication-resistant epilepsy are supposed to be referred for surgical evaluation. Doesn't matter the condition that causes the seizures, Doesn't matter their age, it doesn't matter their cognitive capacity, they're supposed to be referred. Even though we have advocated for this, even though we're very vocal, I mean, I woke up this weekend thinking we are still operating within a broken system because this is not happening regularly. I was just crunching the data in our patient registry, and the delay to surgery for children with infantile spasms, which is, by the way, the most catastrophic type of seizure. I know this because my son had it, that when your child has infantile spasms, it's a child on fire. It's an emergency. They don't have surgery until a median age of 27 months after diagnosis. Weeks matter for these kids. And now we're looking at 27 months to surgery. So I'm not sure what more we can do short of really stepping back and saying it's a system in crisis that's broken, and we need to sound the alarm now about it.
Well, I'm glad we have you on this so that we can voice that even more now. So we first met, or had the opportunity to meet, a few years ago, or actually 5 years ago, I'd say now, at the American Epilepsy Society meeting. And you were already very familiar with MEG at that point, which I thought was very refreshing at the time. Can you tell us a bit more about your first exposure to MEG and why this is a modality that you've advocated for within your community as well?
I think what we first started to see was the lack of MEG machines at so many different facilities. So we have a travel scholarship where we award families up to $1,000 to travel to an experienced epilepsy center for a surgical evaluation. And the reason we do it is because these travel costs are generally not covered by insurance. They're certainly not covered by public insurance. We started to see a lot of families asking to travel for MEG. And I was a little embarrassed. I didn't realize only a handful of facilities across the United States have a MEG machine. So we'd see families having surgical evaluations in this city and then have to fly to another city to get the MEG scan that they needed. So while I was familiar with MEG, what I was not familiar with was that the number of facilities that don't have this very important modality for testing for our kids.
So we've been sort of proud to be able to support the last few family conferences that were hosted by PESA, and which I think is one of the most sort of powerful events that I've seen in advocacy groups, to be honest. Can you tell our listeners more about the sort of global Pediatric Epilepsy Surgery Registry and the impact you hope to make with this? Also, how does this tie into your broader research collaborations that you're hoping to get?
Our registry is the only patient-facing, parents answer the question, data collection in the world that is trying to understand all of these various issues that families want to know about. So it's primarily whether these procedures stop or slow down the seizures. And secondarily, what is the developmental trajectory of the child after surgery? That's what I wanted to know. Is this surgery going to help my child in terms of stopping his seizures? But secondarily, what is he going to be like afterwards? You know, whether you're doing a small laser ablation or removing half a child's brain, obviously there are a lot of different surgeries you can do in between there. Parents want to know, what is my kid going to be like after surgery? And that is the registry's sweet spot. It's capturing the developmental trajectory. We've already had a paper published in Epilepsia. In fact, that was the first paper published out of our registry. And for the viewers that don't know that, this is the #1 medical journal in the epilepsy space. And that paper captured the developmental trajectory of children with hemimegalencephaly who had had hemispherectomy surgery. So again, answering the question for the families, what's my child going to be over time after surgery? What can I expect? We've had several abstracts published at the American Epilepsy Society out of the registry. We've had abstracts published out of the Endocrine Society. I just gave a talk at the American Academy of Audiologists about what our registry says about hearing and listening after these surgeries. So what it's doing is it's taking the parent-patient journey, the child's journey, capturing it in a data-driven way, and then we're pushing it out to the medical community and the researchers to help them understand our kids as well.
Yeah, that's a connection that is really needed at this point, right?
There's no other data collection that's doing that as far as.
That's really good. And before we wrap up, I mean, we could talk for hours, I suspect, but
Yeah.
I would like to make sure that, you know, the audience that we're going to hopefully reach here as well is how can they get involved with PESA? So either as a clinician even or as a caregiver, because, you know, that's often a question that we get as well as a sort of vendor of this technology.
Sure. I think there are several different ways that you can work with us. If you're a parent, the first thing I would say is go to our website and do a deep dive on all of our content. We have so much relevant content, whether you're just starting your epilepsy surgery journey or whether your child's had surgery and is now entering the school system. If you think that the clinical community doesn't understand these kids, wait until you put them in school. A lot of these kids get put into a special education class where they may only be learning to color for the next several years. And we know many of them can learn how to read, even though they've had this history of catastrophic epilepsy. So we help the school teams understand that. You can volunteer to be a parent support navigator, where you help other parents navigate the journey. If you're a researcher or a clinician, dive into our patient registry data, see what the data says, and publish out of it, because those publications help guide our families on what happens after surgery. Next year, our family conference will be in Texas. So if you are a family, you have got to come to it. There's nothing else like it. If you're a researcher or a clinician, please reach out to me. We'd love to have you speak to our families about it. And if you're a corporate partner, we'd love to see you at our expo, because that is a terrific way to connect with our community.
Well, I hope we can make a difference even with this segment today to reach out to more people. Monika, thank you so much for being here today with us. It was really great to speak with you and for offering sort of more insight into the great work that PESA does and sharing your experience. I hope we can help support you with getting the message out even more with this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.